Since the year 2000, Britain has lost over 16,000 pubs, more than a third of them gone, closed, converted, demolished, turned into flats. In the first 3 months of 2026 alone, 161 pubs shut their doors across England, Scotland and Wales, almost 2 every single day. But some refuse to die. 20 of them have been standing so long that they make the nation itself look young, and their stories are extraordinary. Hey, before we get into it, if you love looking back at the good old days of Britain, go check out my mate Albert over at Albert's Old Britain. Trust me, he's bringing back memories you didn't even know you had. Let us start where every argument about old pubs eventually starts. In Nottingham, the oldie trip to Jerusalem sits at the base of Castle Rock, carved into the sandstone beneath Nottingham Castle. The painted sign on the front wall claims the date 1089, the year Richard the Lionheart took the throne and Pope Gregory VIII called for the Third Crusade. It is one of the most famous pub dates in the country. It is also almost certainly wrong. The caves behind the pub are genuinely ancient. They were likely used as a brewhouse for the castle after the Norman conquest in 1067, but the earliest mention of the trip actually calling itself the oldest pub in England comes from around 1910, when a landlord with a flair for marketing put up a new sign to attract trade. Historic England researchers have pointed out that the earliest parts of the building may only date to around 1650, and the first record of a pub at that location appears in 1751, when it served as an inn called the Pilgrim. The building is real. The caves are real. But the date on the wall is a story that the pub told about itself, and then everyone believed. That does not make it any less worth visiting. In one of the upstairs rooms, there is a small model of a wooden galleon covered in decades of dust. It is called the Cursed Galleon. The story goes that several people who attempted to clean it met untimely deaths, and so every landlord since has left it alone. It sits there still. Nobody touches it. In 2014, a security camera inside the pub captured what appeared to be a ghostly apparition on video, making international news and drawing a fresh wave of curious visitors to Nottingham. 40 miles south in St Albans, Ye Old Fighting Cocks makes an even bolder claim. The pub says it dates to 793, with foundations that were once part of the Palace of Offa, King of the Mercians. The current building is 11th century. It is octagonal, which is unusual for a pub and makes perfect sense when you learn that it was originally a pigeon house. Historic England has since suggested that the octagonal timber frame actually started life as a dovecote built around 1400, later reassembled on its current site around 1600. It was known as the Three Pigeons in 1756 and only became the Fighting Cocks by 1807. Locals believe tunnels connect the beer cellar to St Albans Cathedral, used by monks who apparently needed a direct route between prayer and ale. The pub nearly closed in 2022. The community stepped in and kept it alive. A building that may have stood since the 15th century was saved not by heritage funding or government intervention, but by locals who refused to let it go. Over in the Cotswolds, the Porch House in Stowe on the Wold holds the Guinness World Record as England's oldest inn. Parts of the building have been carbon dated to 947, the year Ethelmar, Duke of Cornwall, is believed to have ordered a hospice built on the site. The timbers in the walls are over 1,000 years old, but here is the complication. It does not appear to have actually operated as a pub until the 1700s. So the building is Anglo-Saxon. The pub is Georgian. Whether a 1,000-year-old building that only started pulling pints 3 centuries ago counts as Britain's oldest pub depends entirely on how you define the question. Nobody has agreed yet. They probably never will. What nobody disputes is the stone fireplace from the 16th century, inscribed with symbols known as witch marks, carved to protect against evil spirits. The marks are still there. You can see them if you sit in the right chair. 30 miles north in the village of Bardsey near Leeds, the Bingley Arms makes its own case. The pub says that a man named Samson Ellis brewed here in 953. We know his name. During renovations in the 1970s, some of the building's timbers were dated to around 1,000 years old, give or take 50. The pub was once called the Priest's Inn. It sat on a well-travelled route between Kirkstall Abbey and York, and hidden inside are 2 priest holes, small concealed spaces where Catholic priests hid during the 16th century when being a Catholic could get you killed. Some historians have noted that the surviving building is more consistent with mid-18th century West Yorkshire architecture, and a date stone from 1738 has been found on the property. But the pub insists its story goes deeper, perhaps as far back as 905, older even than the nearby All Hallows Church built in 950. 1,000 years of continuous occupation, a man's name on the earliest records, a building that hid fugitives in its walls. This is not a museum, it is a pub. You can still get a pint there on a Tuesday afternoon. And then there is the old ferryboat inn in Holywell, Cambridgeshire, which claims to have been serving since 560. The date is almost certainly legend, but inside the pub, set into the floor, is a stone slab. It marks the grave of a woman named Juliet Tuesley, who, according to local tradition, died in the building in 1050. She is said to rise every year on the anniversary of her death. Whether you believe that or not, the slab is real. You stand on it when you walk to the bar. You drink your pint above a woman's tomb. That fact requires no legend to be unsettling. The argument over which pub is oldest will never be settled. Frankly, the pubs themselves seem to enjoy the fight. But the question of age misses the deeper point. What matters about these places is not how old they are, it is what happened inside them. Travel northwest to Bolton in Greater Manchester, and you will find Ye Older Man and Scythe. The earliest recorded mention of its name appears in a charter from 1251. On the 28th of May, 1644, royalist troops under Prince Rupert of the Rhine stormed the town. Up to 1,500 parliamentarians and civilians were killed in what became known as the Bolton Massacre. 7 years later, James Stanley, the 7th Earl of Derby, was brought to this pub. He sat in a chair. He had his last drink. Then he was taken outside and beheaded in front of the building his own family once owned. That chair is still inside the pub. There is an inscription on it. 15th of October, 1651. In this chair, James 7th Earl of Derby sat at the Man and Scythe Inn. The chair has been there for nearly 400 years. Empires have risen and collapsed since that man sat down. The chair remains. In 2016, the pub made international news again when its current owner claimed that the ghost of the Earl of Derby had been captured in a metal canister by Chinese artist Lu Pingyuan. Whether that is art, theatre or madness is for you to decide. What is certain is that this building still generates stories, nearly 8 centuries after someone first wrote its name on a piece of parchment. In the Bishopgate area of Norwich, another ancient pub sits quietly by the river. The Adam and Eve has records dating back to 1249, when workmen building the nearby Norwich Cathedral were housed there and paid with bread and ale. Those cathedral labourers were the first recorded customers. The pub's original owners were monks from Great Hospital, located just down the road. During a cellar excavation in the 1970s, builders discovered human remains belonging to a medieval monk. Since then, staff and visitors have reported the presence of a French-speaking spirit. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the bones were real. They pulled a skeleton from beneath the floor of a working pub. The Adam and Eve does not shout about its age. It does not need to. The cathedral those first drinkers helped to build is still standing across the green. South into Somerset, the George Inn at Norton St. Philip has stood since at least 1327. English Heritage considers it one of the strongest candidates for England's oldest purpose-built inn. Carthusian monks from nearby Hinton Priory built it in 1397 to house merchants visiting their wool fairs. The roof timbers have been dated through dendrochronology to 1431. We know the exact year the trees were felled. The diarist Samuel Pepys passed through here on his way to Bath from Salisbury and noted the stop. In 1685, the Duke of Monmouth used the inn as his headquarters during his failed rebellion. After the rebellion was crushed, Judge Jeffreys arrived. He turned the George into a courtroom and sentenced 12 people to death. They were executed on the village common within sight of the front door. Today, the George wins awards for its food and its rooms. It was AA Inn of the Year in 2024 and 2025. 7 centuries of use. Monks, merchants, rebels, a hanging judge, and now a Sunday roast. Southeast of London, in the Chiltern Hills, the Royal Standard of England near Beaconsfield has a claim that nobody can dispute. Its existence as an alehouse called the Ship Inn is documented as going back to at least 1086. William the Conqueror's surveyors were cataloguing the nation's assets at that time, and this pub was among them. It is one of the only ancient pubs in England with genuine documentary proof of its early history. Charles I hid in a priest hole in the roof during the Civil War. Charles II is said to have entertained his mistresses there, possibly in exchange for granting the pub its new royal name. It has appeared in Hot Fuzz and Midsummer Murders, from the age of the Domesday Survey to Simon Pegg. That is a range of history that very few buildings on Earth can match. On the Great North Road in Grantham, the Angel and Royal has been receiving travellers since 1203. King John held court here. Richard III signed the death warrant of the Duke of Buckingham in one of the upstairs rooms. The facade still shows medieval stonework from the original structure. This was not a village local. This was infrastructure. Everyone heading north or south stopped here. Kings, armies, merchants, pilgrims. The building is the history of English travel written in stone. And in Rotherhithe, on the south bank of the Thames, the Mayflower sits at the original mooring point of the Pilgrim Fathers ship. Established in 1550, it is one of the oldest pubs on the Thames. In July 1620, the Mayflower set sail from this stretch of riverbank. Captain Christopher Jones is buried in the churchyard nearby. The pub is one of a handful in Britain licensed to sell both British and American postage stamps. The earliest parts of the current building date to the 1780s, when it was called the Spread Eagle and Crown. It was severely damaged during the Second World War, leaving only the ground floor standing. The building was rebuilt in the late 1950s and renamed the Mayflower in memory of the Pilgrim ship. An entire nation began its story at the mooring posts outside this building. Americans who visit treat it as a pilgrimage. For the locals, it is simply the pub by the river. Both things are true at the same time. Now, let us lower the volume for a moment. Not every ancient pub announces itself with a plaque and a gift shop. Some simply sit there, quiet and unchanged, waiting for you to notice. The Old Bell Hotel in Malmesbury, Wiltshire, was built in 1220 as a guest house for monks visiting the 12th century abbey next door. It claims to be England's oldest purpose-built hotel. Today it is covered in wisteria, and a presence known as the Grey Lady is said to walk the upper floors. There is no drama here, no executions, no cursed objects, just 800 years of hospitality and a ghost who has never checked out. In the ancient town of Rye in East Sussex, the Mermaid Inn has cellars dating to 1156. The timber-framed building leans and creaks in ways that only very old structures can. In the 18th century, the Hawkhurst Gang, one of the most feared smuggling operations in southern England, used the Mermaid as their headquarters. They sat openly at the tables with loaded pistols in front of them. Nobody dared challenge them. The cobbled streets of Rye slope down to the pub as if the town itself is tilting toward it. On the Thames at Wapping in East London, the prospect of Whitby has been standing since around 1520. It was originally known as the Devil's Tavern, which tells you something about the clientele. Though heritage researchers have noted that the First references to the pub's founding in 1520 did not actually appear until the 1950s and may have been part of a marketing campaign rather than genuine historical record. Judge Jeffreys, the same man who turned the George Inn into a courtroom, is said to have drunk here as well. On the river terrace, a noose still hangs over the water. It is a reference to the execution dock that once stood nearby, where pirates were hanged at low tide and left for 3 tides to wash over their bodies. Diners sit 6 feet from that noose, eating fish and chips while the Thames moves beneath them. The contrast is the point. And up on Hampstead Heath, the Spaniards Inn has stood since 1585. Byron drank here, Keats wrote nearby. Dickens set scenes from the Pickwick Papers within its walls. Bram Stoker sent his characters past it in Dracula. Dick Turpin's father reportedly kept the pub, and Turpin himself is said to have hidden in the toll house. The walls of this building have absorbed more English literature than most libraries. It is not haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by fiction, but some pubs carry a darkness that fiction cannot match. Real darkness. The kind that seeped into the walls and never left. In the Black Mountains of South Wales, at the edge of a lane in Llanfihangel Crwcorni, stands the Skirrid Mountain Inn. It dates to around 1110, just after the Norman conquest, when the border between England and Wales was contested and violent. The first floor was used as a court of law. According to local accounts, as many as 180 people were sentenced to death here. The hangings were carried out inside the building from an oak beam above the staircase. If you look up at that beam today, you can see the marks. Grooves worn into the wood by ropes. The Skirrid is also said to have been a rallying point for Owain Glyndwr during his uprising against Henry IV. The current owner has told journalists that guests report strange marks appearing around their necks in the night. During the first night the owner spent in the building, his wife felt something pulling at her leg. They later learned that relatives of the condemned would tug on their loved ones' legs during hangings to end their suffering more quickly. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the rope marks on the beam are not a story. They are physical evidence. You can touch them. In Nottingham, not far from the trip to Jerusalem, Ye Old Salutation Inn dates to around 1240. Locals call it the Sal. One landlord estimated that the building housed 89 separate ghosts, which may be a record even by Nottingham standards. Beneath the pub are caves carved into the sandstone. They were used as hiding places during the English Civil War, and later as air raid shelters during the Blitz. In those caves today, somebody has placed children's toys, dolls and teddy bears. They are there for the spirit of a young girl named Rosie, who is believed to haunt the cellars. Civil War bolt hole, Blitz shelter, and now a place where strangers leave dolls for a dead child they never knew. That is a compressed history of what this country does with its underground spaces. In Llanginwyd, a small village in South Wales, the old house, known in Welsh as Y Hen Dau, was founded in 1147. It is the second oldest pub in Wales and claims to be the third oldest restaurant in the world. The historical claim rests on the building's Sidagwech, a traditional Welsh nook that dates to the 12th century. The pub sits within the churchyard walls, surrounded by gravestones. The village is associated with the legend of the Maid of Cefn Idfa, a Welsh love story that ends, as the best Welsh stories often do, in death. You drink your pint among the graves. The proximity of ale and mortality is closer here than almost anywhere else in Britain. And on the edge of Edinburgh, tucked beneath Arthur's Seat in the village of Duddingston, the Sheephide Inn has had a pub on its site since 1360. King James VI presented the landlord with a ram's head snuff box in 1580. The pub sits exactly halfway between Craigmillar Castle and Holyrood Palace. Both James and his mother, Mary Queen of Scots, stopped here regularly. Before the Battle of Prestonpans, the army of Bonnie Prince Charlie was encamped at Duddingston for an entire month. Inside, the pub has a Skittles alley built around 1880, believed to be the last of its kind in Scotland. And until the late 19th century, sheepheads were so commonplace in the area that locals used the skulls as cobblestones for their pathways. Skull Cobbles, a Skittles Alley, Mary Queen of Scots, and Bonnie Prince Charlie. Every detail in this pub is stranger and more specific than the last. We come now to the present, to what we are doing to these places, to what we are allowing to happen. On Fleet Street in London, older Cheshire cheese has stood in some form since at least 1538. The current building was rebuilt in 1667, shortly after the Great Fire of London, though the vaulted cellars may date to a 13th century Carmelite monastery. The list of people who drank here is almost absurd. Samuel Johnson, whose house is 2 doors away, Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Arthur Conan Doyle, G.K. Chesterton, W.B. Yeats. A parrot named Polly lived in the pub for 40 years and became internationally famous. When Polly died in 1926, obituaries appeared in over 200 newspapers around the world. The sawdust that once covered the floors is gone now. The pub belongs to a chain. The literary ghosts remain, but the soul of the place has been hollowed out and replaced by a corporate drinks menu. If they can do that to the Cheshire cheese, what chance does your local have? The final pub on this journey sits at the edge of Loch Lomond, at the end of a single track road. The Drovers Inn in Inverarnon opened in 1705, 2 years before the Acts of Union created Great Britain. This pub is older than the country it stands in. Inside you will find stuffed animals on the walls, kilted staff behind the bar, flagstone floors worn smooth by 3 centuries of boots, and no mobile phone signal whatsoever. The fireplace has not gone out in living memory. Rob Roy McGregor himself walked cattle past this door. The Drovers predates the very idea of Britain, and yet pubs like this are vanishing. Between 2019 and 2024, Britain lost over 2,200 pubs, 6 every single week, shutting their doors for good. In 2024 alone, over 1,000 pub businesses across Great Britain stopped operating. Another 210 pub buildings were physically converted into shops or housing. For every £3 spent in a pub, £1 goes straight to the taxman. Young people are drinking less. After work, footfall has collapsed because of working from home. In England, 24% of the population did not touch alcohol during 2024, up from 19% just 2 years earlier. Among people aged 16 to 24, that figure reaches 39%. These 20 pubs survived the Black Death, the Civil War, and the Blitz. They survived because generation after generation decided they mattered enough to keep open. The fires were kept burning. Somebody always stood behind the bar. The question now is whether we still believe these places are worth fighting for. Whether a building where ropes wore grooves into oak beams and a parrot was mourned by the world matters more than another block of flats. And don't forget, if you want a proper trip down memory lane, my mate Albert over at Albert's Old Britain has got you covered. Go show him some love.